Finding random frames in Blade Runner until it's ugly. This is one of my favorite films of all time, both in terms of cinematography and story, so this is gonna be fun. 1, 2, 3. Gorgeous. I am noticing that the eyes are a little bit out of focus, and that probably has to do with the fact that they are using anamorphic lenses, specifically the Panavision C series anamorphic lenses on a Panavision Panaflex Gold 35mm camera. Sometimes when you have anamorphic lenses and you have a very shallow depth of field or a very low f-stop, you're gonna have a little bit of trouble focusing, specifically because the depth of field is so shallow. So when you have a shot like this, when the actress is walking towards the camera and you have to follow her eyes with the focus, it is quite difficult. Another way you can tell that these are anamorphic lenses is by the bokeh that you can see back here, these blurred highlights. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, really cool shot. One lighting technique you will see a lot in this film is uplighting, which just means the light is coming from below the actor. Now, uplighting, in my opinion, has two different effects depending on the quality of the light you are using. If you are using a more harsh light with very defined shadows, I think it can give a creepy horror movie type look, but if you are using a soft light, as you can see here, I think it gives more of a futuristic look, because light that is nice like this doesn't usually come from the ground in our modern day society. It's not ugly. 1, 2, 3. That's a cool shot. So like I said in my previous video when I talked about Blade Runner 2049, a lot of the cityscapes in this film were shot with miniatures, and so they would just make miniature buildings and then composite those shots with shots like this of Harrison Ford, he's not a miniature, he's an actual person. When they did shots like this that would be composited later, they actually switched from the 35mm camera to a 65mm camera, which is basically just a bigger film stock, and that gave them more resolution to work with so that the final product, the final image, would not be as degraded. We can also see a key concept that they used on this film when shooting miniatures, and that is atmospheric diffusion. As we can see, it looks like the further down this road we go, the more atmosphere there is, the more fog there is. And how they did this is that they would film some of these miniature sets in smoke rooms where they would pump the room full of smoke, and that was just done to mimic what happens in real life, what our eyes see when we look far in the distance, and that is that the atmosphere tends to obscure things that are far away and not so much things that are close. So replicating this real life phenomenon helps trick our eyes into thinking this is a real set. It's not ugly. 1, 2, 3. But first, please, if you enjoy watching these videos and you want to see more, consider liking and subscribing to my channel. I am trying to get to 20,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I will do something special if that happens. I don't know what it is yet, but I'll figure it out. Oh, that's menacing. The lighting here is being motivated by moonlight hitting the back of his head and then probably bouncing off some metallic surface down here, reflecting back into his face. However, they probably are using two different lights here, because this light is a lot more blue, mimicking moonlight, and the light on his face is a lot more neutral, probably more around 5600 Kelvin, to just give his skin tones a more natural reddish look and not be washed out with the blue. A cool thing I learned about this scene when researching it, though, is that a lot of the rain in this scene was actually composited later. It was not shot on set. So they actually shot a lot of the rain separately in front of a huge black background, in front of which they backlit the rain so that it would show up against the black background. And to do that, they actually had to shoot in a parking lot in Burbank to get a large enough background. And in front of that background, they shot different kinds of rain for different kinds of camera angles. They then used some fancy compositing tricks so that the rain they composited onto the original image would only show up on the light parts of the original image, where light was, where the rain would typically naturally be backlit. So as you can see here, you can see the rain over the light parts of the image, but you cannot see the rain over the dark parts of the image. Don't ask me how they did that. It's way over my head. But not an ugly shot. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, whoa. So I don't remember this shot in the movie. I don't know why the owl has the replicant eye thing, because if you haven't seen the movie, go watch the movie, spoiler alert or whatever. But most of the replicants in some scenes, most of the robotic characters have this thing going on in their eye. They don't have a normal pupil for some of the shots. I'm not sure exactly what the rules are for why and when this shows up, but you will see the robots have this. I'm not sure why the owl has this. Is the owl a robot? Is this a real owl? Oh yeah, it is a real owl. I don't know, maybe the owl is a robot. I guess the owl's a robot. So anyway, the way they achieved this reflection in the eye was a practical thing that they did on set, and here's how they did it. According to the 1982 issue of American Cinematographer, the glowing quality of the replicant's eyes was achieved live on set during principal photography using a simple technique. The filmmakers used a two-way mirror, 50% transmission and 50% reflection, and placed it in front of the camera's lens at a 45-degree angle. This is essentially the same thing as putting a teleprompter in front of the lens. Next, the filmmaker shined a light into the mirror in the same path of the lens so that it would reflect into the eyes of the subject. And I find this fascinating because the eye lights that you use for your characters are just another tool that you can use to illustrate who that character is to your audience. Take something like Nicole Kidman's character in To Die For. Check these out. These are really cool, and it illustrates something about her character. Do not neglect the eye light. So, pretty cool shot. 1, 2, 3. Okay, this one's fine. So one thing I found cool about this film is that a lot of the lighting in the outdoor sets were achieved with just neon signs that they rented from a neon sign company. And you can see that here that the key light on his face is basically just coming from this red sign over here. And then this edge light right here is probably coming from a normal film light backlighting him from above. But a lot of the lighting in the background is also coming from these several neon signs that they have scattered about. Lighting like this with practical lights that are actually in the scene is a great way of lighting because it looks natural, it makes everything blend together, and it doesn't look like you're trying too hard. It doesn't make the scene look lit. However, to do this, you do have to make sure that you have enough intensity in the lights to properly expose your characters. So not ugly, let's go towards the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Oh yes, best shot of the movie. There's something iconic about this shot, even though there's something kind of simple about it. The one thing the DP Jordan Cronenweth did a lot on this film was that he implemented the use of backlighting, very heavy, harsh backlighting. As you can see, there is a light back here, maybe an HMI light, maybe a xenon spotlight, which was also used on this film, blasting this side of her face. It is more of a blue-toned light than the light that is hitting the front of her face, which is more of a tungsten orange-colored light. And it is also a bit softer. The shadow on her nose is not super defined. So I imagine what they are doing is they are just using a tungsten light, bouncing it off of a bounce board from this direction, and then the light is bouncing back on her face, creating a slightly softer orange light. They could also be using a negative fill with the use of a flag on this side because this side of her face looks pretty dark to me. But other than that, there's not much going on besides obviously the lighting gag in her eyes that we talked about earlier. The smoke in this scene does a lot to it, just looks really cool when it's being backlit by this powerful light. Smoking is not cool, but it does look cool. We also just have a very strong example of chromatic aberration around the edge of her face, which is being caused by shooting on film and the anamorphic lenses. It just provides kind of a futuristic feel, I guess. So not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's cool. Here we actually have a very flat image due to the use of one color. There is no contrast within the color of this shot, and so that creates a very flat image because you cannot easily distinguish between the foreground and the background, or from his face or his shirt or anything for that matter. Again, we have backlighting, and in this shot you will see another technique that Cronenweth used during this film a lot, and that is shafts of light. If I play this image, you will notice that the shaft of light is actually moving. And moving light creates visual interest in an image. If you have the opportunity to move lights like they do in the Blade Runner films, take that opportunity, but it has to make sense within the story. And the way it makes sense within this story is that outside of these windows, there are canonically these spinner vehicles flying through the city streets with heavy spotlights searching for criminals or who knows what. And sometimes these spotlights go into these people's houses through their windows. In order to achieve this look, they actually used xenon spotlights. However, in order to see those spotlights in the air, you do need that atmospheric diffusion, and the way they are achieving the atmospheric diffusion again is by filling this room with smoke. And it also makes sense because he is smoking a cigarette, so there would be smoke in this room. Without a medium in the air for the light to hit and bounce off of, you're not going to get these defined patterns of light. There's actually a scene later on in the film that I think looks better that implements the same spotlight technique, and it's this one where Rachel is standing in front of this window, and as we can see, the spotlights just pass through this grated window right here, creating this interesting looking pattern in the light, and it is quite great. So yeah, not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's a cool shot. Most of this film was filmed on sets, but I think this location was actually filmed at a practical location in downtown LA called the Bradbury Building. There's also a location earlier in the film that I think was done at Union Station in LA. Just a few fun facts there. We have mostly a silhouetted image, and as you can see, there are a lot of those moving lights again through the smoky atmosphere. And one thing I love about actually using locations is that it just tends to have more detail, I think, than a lot of sets. As you can see down here, I'm not sure they would go through all of the trouble making these intricate details in the railing on a set, because that would just take a long time. But if you have a location that already has them, you don't have to make them. Fun fact. So not ugly. Let's go towards the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this is a cool shot. We have more of a flat image here, primarily being backlit by whatever is outside of this window, probably maxi brute lights just shining through, or bouncing off of a white fabric, and then the bounce is coming back through the window. I'm not sure, but it is still creating this edge on the light right here, so we get a shaft of light. And then we are also filling in their faces with a little bit of tungsten light from this side of the camera. It's still kind of a flat shot, but it actually does have some texture and some contrast. As you can see, there's almost a gradient in the light right here for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why, but it seems to go from darker to more light as it passes through the atmosphere. Not sure what's going on there, but there's definitely more of a gradient. Either way, not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, gorgeous shot. I personally love it when the lighting on a character's face has some texture to it and it doesn't just look like you stuck a light right next to them. As you can see here, you can't really tell what's going on. You can't map the lighting precisely because there's just spots all over her face and you don't really know exactly what's going on. There's a soft light coming from over here, and then there's a hard light coming from a cookie cutter, and then there's maybe a light coming from this way, filling in this side of her face. I like it when you can't tell exactly what's going on with the lighting because it makes for an interesting image. Not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, oh wow, this is one of the best ones so far as close-ups go. I'm starting to notice a pattern with the way Cronenweth mixes the color temperature of his lights, because as you can see, again, we have a light on the edge of him that is more blue tinted, and then on this side, this is a lot more gold. I don't know if they're reflecting a light off some gold metallic substance over here and then reflecting back on his face, or if they are using a gel in front of a tungsten light. I don't know, but I think that it is clear that Cronenweth likes to mix color temperatures, and that creates contrast on the face. You have blue and you have orange. Very nice, very nice. I like it, and I should keep that in mind for my next project. He's also getting a little bit of fill light maybe from above right here, because we can see that there is a softer golden light filling in his face. Also, I like what the anamorphic lens is doing to this patterned background. As you can see, it kind of is warping it a little bit, and I think that just provides a more interesting image as well. And then we have a little bit of an eye light in his eyes that has not been neglected here, and that just helps us to connect with his character more. So not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Oh, love this shot. As you can see, the lighting here is a lot different than the previous shot. The lighting is not as harsh and it is not as bright. This is probably being lit with those neon signs that we saw earlier. Probably a blue neon sign coming from this direction, giving her this blue tone in her skin, and then they probably just took a random red neon sign, put it below her, and again, they are uplighting her with that red neon sign, giving a little bit of contrast and texture in her face. Compare this shot to the shot we saw earlier. Notice how this is a lot more monochromatic. It doesn't have as much contrast, and it is not as interesting in my opinion. Not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Oh, here she is again, and I think we have the same thing going on. I think lighting like this for me is very powerful because it just looks more natural and it creates more intricate details in the skin tones, because, you know, you have blues up here and you have blues right here and you have blues right here and you have reds over here and you have kind of greens right here, and it's very nice looking to me. We also have this shattered glass in the background that is creating a nice texture and pattern, and also showing us the neon signs that they are using in the reflections. Great looking shot. 1, 2, 3. Another great looking shot. Another thing I love when lighting characters is not directly lighting their face. So as you can see here, the light, probably motivated from a window over here, is primarily hitting her body, and then she is getting a little bit of reflection, maybe off of some other light bouncing off a bounce board, or maybe she's getting a little bit of reflection of the light bouncing off her shirt on her face right here. And it makes it very soft, it makes it very understated, and creates contrast within her character and within her body. You have contrast between her face and her body, and that just is interesting to me. I'm not sure why, other than to say it just doesn't look like it's been lit. It looks like the light is actually pouring through a window and bouncing off subjects and bouncing onto her face. It looks like it is real to me. Another thing they did in the scene is they just used this window to separate her from the background. They just blasted a light through this window, and that created contrast between the window, the background, and her. And again, on this side of the frame, we have what I like to talk about a lot on this channel, which is patterns of light and dark. So they did a good job of just making sure that this area stood out from this area and this area by having a separate light like this part of the image, so that there is a contrast, there's a pattern between light to dark to light to dark. Not ugly. 1, 2, 3. It's a cool shot too. I think this scene is actually very impressively lit because simultaneously they are lighting her and they are lighting him. They are lighting him to be more of a menacing figure, and they do that by using harsher defined lights, and they are still somehow getting a very soft light on her. You can tell she does not have a very hard defined light on her nose shadow. I don't know exactly how they're doing this, besides they're somehow like using a soft light up here on her face, lighting from directly above and somehow not getting it on him very much, and then they are lighting him through the window, as you can see through these blinds, creating this pattern. So even when both of these characters are in the same shot, they are choosing separate ways of lighting them to emphasize their character traits, especially in this scene where he is being, you know, not so great to her. Not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Love this. This actually kind of reminds me of a shot from Barry Lyndon because it looks like it was painted in the Renaissance or something. So I think the primary reason this shot looks good is not necessarily due to the lighting, although the light shaft coming in through here is really cool, but it primarily looks good because of the set design and the positioning of the blocking of these characters and dolls. So not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Great shot. Very soft lighting coming from above. I don't know what to say. It's gorgeous. That one's fine. Not too bad. Uplighting again. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's a great shot. Backlighting primarily and then filling in on this side of his face. I like the pattern of blue texture in the background. 1, 2, 3. This one's verging on too dark for me, but they are providing some contrast with the light outside of the door, so it's kind of silhouetting him. Looks pretty grungy, but I don't think it's ugly. 1, 2, 3. Look again, another uplight. Lots of uplight in this movie. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this one's cool. Not gonna judge the motion blur. Kind of the same set we saw earlier. I just think that the primary reason these shots look good is because of the set design. 1, 2, 3. This one looks fine. This is probably one of my least favorite looking shots so far. There's just not much detail to grab onto, I think. I don't know. Let's go towards the end. 1, 2, 3. That's a funny frame to land on, but that's cool. The texture of the scene is very great. The set design again, the water, it's just wonderful. 1, 2, 3. Oh, whoa, that's creepy. That's a good shot. 1, 2, 3. And this one's fine. This is fine. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say this frame is ugly. It doesn't mean the shot is ugly. Here's the shot in its context. But I do think this individual frame is too dark. Can't really see what's going on. It's just not a very pretty frame. So let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe. If you want to see more, please let me know what your favorite thing is. I don't know. Just do it. Goodbye.